So in this video I wanted to share my latest art witchery work, which is inside this altered book, which is a sort of geography hardback book given to me by my neighbour. But rather than just tell you the story of my work, I wanted to share it in a way that was useful to you. So I've kind of come up with 10 points that might be useful. The first is, don't worry what to call your books. That's my first point to you. Now this, I could call it a reclaimed book or an altered book. I could call it a sketchbook because there's artwork in here. I could call it a grimoire because I think there is magic inside the pages. I could call it a magic book. I could call it an art diary. I could call it a tarot journal because there's tarot in here as well. And then I start to worry, well actually it's a crossover of all those things. Does that mean I'm going to be wrong if I call it one thing and then put something else in it? I think we can really get hung up by what we call our books. So let's just call them enchanted books. Now inside my enchanted book there is a lot of gesso, because the next point that I want to talk about is the magic of subtraction. If you get really hung up on what to put inside an enchanted book, then don't think about adding to it. Think first about subtracting. I've talked about this technique many times on my channel, the magic of subtraction. Gesso is your friend for this. Gesso is just a white primer that will prime a page ready to take other paints. It's like a white paint in itself. You can get it cheap, you can get it expensive, you can also get gesso in different colours as well, but it will prime the page for you to then do your own painting on top. But it is also a fantastic subtraction tool. So the pages I want to share with you that I've been working on recently, you'll see that I start with gesso. I've gessoed out some of the images. I've also gessoed out an entire side of a double page spread. All the text has gone, and I've just kept key things, key words, key phrases, key pictures that have jumped out at me that begin to tell me a story. Our story, mine and the book's story. I think if you trust art witchery and this process and an enchanted book to tell you the story it wants to tell you and to give you the messages it wants to tell you, then you can't go wrong. And the magic of subtraction is a fantastic way to begin to unearth that story. The third point is the type of book can make an impact. Now this is a geographical book about a certain place in the world, and for me I'm really hoping that it will bring the spirit of place into the magic of this book. It might be that you choose, say, an animal encyclopedia if you want to bring in kind of the magic of animal energy. So the type of book does make a difference. Now you can see where I've gessoed parts of that picture out, and that side that I'm painting on now, that was once all text, and what I'm doing, I'm expanding the picture. And this is my fourth point. I'm listening, and I'm listening to the whispers that are coming out of the book. Yes, that's going to be like the voice of my imagination in my head, but I don't want anybody to dismiss that voice as just your imagination. Listening to the whispers as you work, they're going to be specific whispers to this double page spread. For me, I feel the spirit of place coming in. I feel certain aspects of what I'm doing begin to take on more significance. And the final image that I ended up with, it had already told me a really significant message and a story of a village of the lonely up in a biting landscape, of being discarded and of putting up walls, shutting down the windows. The square was really significant in this as well. It was so impactful, that story, that I did the next thing, which is repetition. All I've done here, I've just got 4 pieces of A4, I've taped them onto my table, and I'm using the Enchanted Book double page spread in front of me on the easel, which you can just see, to repeat the drawing and to let the story continue inside my mind. As I'm drawing, different things are being whispered to me, like the sharp biting edges of the mountain being almost like serrated knife edges, the cruelty of life, that diagonal movement down the mountain, which you can see I've done in dark stripes, like a sort of a tumbling trough where souls get thrown into, that have been treated cruelly, the way that we can shut down in life. You can see some of those aspects. I will now move on even more in a repeated drawing. You can see that serration of the mountain edge is coming in there, and as I began to draw the squares tumbling down the mountain, it made me think of the childhood drawing of a dream house I used to do. Just a simple square with square windows, a square chimney, your typical child's house. And I just got so sad, thinking I would never have dreamt as a little girl drawing that dream house that life could be so cruel. And then all of those squares tumbling down the mountain became versions of that dream house when trauma hits and we get tipped over an edge by life or by betrayal or by cruelty. And I imagined all of these shocked dream houses that were once so naive tumbling down the mountainside and landing in a village of lost souls. And I thought to myself, gosh, that's where I've been living. I've been shut down. The houses all look like they've got boarded up windows. They've all got walls built around them. It is a village where boundaries rule, where self-protection rules. This is where I'd lived. I'd lived in this ice cat world, in the village of the lost and the lonely, whilst trying to heal. It was quite a story that really developed then out of repetition. And then randomly, from using up the old paint so it wouldn't dry out, I randomly just blobbed down some paint to make a background, and I saw a figure, and it reminded me of photographs I'd got of me as a kid in the childhood mountains of my home, walking the mountains in a brown duffel coat with my dogs. And the figure was in both bits of scrap paper, just using up paint. How very random that there should be a story of a hillside with me as a kid in, when I was painting mountainsides and hillsides with my childhood home rolling down. I thought that synchronicity was quite strange, and it was about to become even stranger. I used other materials, pencils and pastels and oil pastels, to go back into my paintings that I'd done, and believe it or not, I found figures within the paint splodges of these more abstract paintings. I couldn't believe it. It was the same figure, a figure packing up her house and walking out of the village. It would seem by repetition and using different media, I had found this magical figure on repeat. She appeared in 2 of these abstract paintings, and I couldn't believe my eyes. This is where art witchery will take you. You don't have to have the whole thing planned out. Just start working and see what happens. The magic comes really in the process. I could not have planned this out, especially with the figure appearing. This was just part of the process, trusting the magic, doing those repeat drawings and just letting that story evolve as you work. You can see here those pictures became more and more abstract, and you can see the figure in the bottom right corner walking out of the scene, still in a duffel coat, but this time carrying a suitcase with her childhood home still intact within it, dreams still belonging to her. It was a really moving experience to do this practice on repeat and to find the figure. And look, you can see she's got her little childhood drawing of a home inside her luggage, which she's packed. It's time to leave the village of the lonely, as many more lost souls are pushed and tumble down the mountain to begin their healing journey. This is like the Fool's Journey, but the Fool's Journey in a very barren landscape. The Fool's Journey, when you're doing a cycle through the story, that is one that will rip your heart out, an extreme version of the Fool's story. And I'd found myself deciding it was time to start again in all of the images, and I just loved it. I think point 6, as I look at the close-ups of these more abstract paintings, is also not to be afraid to let not just key points of a story jump out at you in whispers, but also to let like key colours or key shapes begin to take on an association. For me, the square became that idea of somebody who was once naive being tipped over a mountaintop. The serrated edges of the mountains representing like mouths trying to smear campaign or bite at you. So lines going down the mountains took on a significance. The squares, you can see here I've drawn the square many times in one spot. Yes, they're the houses about to settle in that village, but there's also representation of like the lost soul, the naivety, and then that becoming a wall around yourself, the fact that you've lost it and it turns into a protective wall. That colour purple of the protection became caves in the mountainside as well that other people may be hiding in. There was a second story coming in there about the people who refuse to leave the mountainside because it gets comfortable. Healing and moving out isn't comfortable. Sometimes we just dig a hole next to the cruel mountaintops and we decide to stay there because it's familiar. All of that had come just from this one page, and as I turned the page I wondered what was next. This face really, it gave me a sense of foreboding, that face. I wondered what would come next. But for now, I was just blown away by this magical figure that had appeared just out of paint blobs randomly put down and had also reappeared inside the drawings and the paintings that I'd already done on repeat. That's how art witchery works. It's just so breathtaking and magical and fun, and it just feels like an adventure where you never quite know what's going to happen next. So I had all of these pieces in front of me, but I decided that I wanted to combine my art witchery practice and my enchanted books with my tarot practice. And I think that this is point 7. Don't be afraid to combine all of the aspects that you use in your spiritual practice. I could have thrown charm casting down over this page, or perhaps I could have pathworked and meditated into this page. All of those things are aspects of my practice, but I decided instead to call on the spirit of place and to ask, what was this place for? What was this village of the lonely for? and I got the Hierophant card for you to sit and learn and heal and put down new roots. And then the Fool card to begin again. The Fool is at the start of another cliff. This time we're jumping, we're not being pushed. That blew my mind. What perfect cards for this spirit of place out of this book to speak the messages of. The next card I wanted to ask advice for that person walking out of the picture, the person that now feels they're ready to leave this village. How do they do that? And I pulled the Chariot card. Find your path, the path that you love. You hold the reins now. You direct the story. But then a message about the sorrow of what you've been through. The Five of Cups. There is an acknowledgement here, a call to process it properly, let it go, not just to stifle it and shut down the pain of what I've experienced. And also the Knight of Cups. Emotions, make sure you're processing those emotions. I knew I'd been numbing my emotions out with various addictive behaviours that were doing me no good at all. When I asked what the next step of my journey would be out of the village, I pulled the Devil card. It really is a call to address that numbing, to sit in my emotions and to process properly. It was all here in the cards. And how do I do that? How do I process properly? Embody the King of Wands. This is a repeat card for me. This keeps coming out. The underlying energy as well. The Star. My Hope card. I found combining my other tools in my spiritual practice, like tarot, and in a moment I'm going to pull some oracle cards as well, on top of my enchanted book, was just so phenomenal. It just clarified, it made me realise I was on the right track for the whispers I'd heard. It added in as well that idea of letting go and using my emotions, and like my emotions are still a part of this journey even though I'm ready to leave the village. Such powerful work, such revelations. This is really important work for me. They're revelations that I don't get anywhere else, and for me it gives me a whole focus moving forward for the next few steps. Now the oracle cards I pulled, look at this. We've got a person appearing in the one card, pulling a square in the other card. It literally is a representation of the painting that I just painted. So now is the house. I'm still in the village, but I'm about to leave. I'm not getting ready, I'm being ready. I am now ready to leave. There is that figure again that has emerged. Along the top of her, there are another row of shapes and squares and circles as well. For me, those two oracle cards from the Brow Talej oracle just really fit for me with what I just experienced within the book. It was another confirmation. So I think combining practices, it's just so powerful, and it can really give you some really seriously clear insights. I combined practices again on the next page. I'd spoken to a friend on the phone about this face, and I said, well, perhaps it just means that there's a higher being looking over the mountain even when we were broken. But the more I looked at it, the more foreboding I felt it felt. It gave me weird vibes, like being peeked at. It didn't feel like it had got good intent. So this time, you'll notice I did the tarot reading first because I couldn't quite work it out. And I asked my tarot deck, who is this? Who is this face? The card that came out was astounding for me, the Queen of Swords, but it had come out reversed. The Queen of Swords reversed is my narcissistic mother's card. And that right next to the word contributors. Who contributed to tipping me over the icy edge with malice? My mother, my narcissistic mother. The owl in this card is even sitting at the top of an icy edge. She was one of the contributors. As I was shuffling, I began to think of all the other contributors that had helped push me as well. So how do I get away properly from my mother's voice and the voice of the contributors? The Two of Swords. You decide. There is a duality in the two. You can take it either way. I can choose to stay where I am, or I can choose to move on. I asked what would happen if I didn't move on, and the card Death came out. Again, though, there's a duality in the Death card. It can either mean an end and literal death, or it can mean a rebirth, stepping into something new. The Moon card came out, that next to the Queen of Swords. It's about confusion, the confusion of gaslighting and being involved in toxic family. I didn't want that anymore. I pulled another card to see what I truly did want. The Six of Swords. Journeying to calmer waters. I looked to see what the underlying energy of this reading was, and this is again another moment of magic gone astronomical, because look at the synchronicities between the underlying energy card and the Queen of Swords. So the underlying energy card was the High Priestess, but there's an owl in this card and the same trees. I think that's that duality again. You can either listen to your own instincts, your own magic, your own voice, become your own high priestess, or continue to listen to the moonlit, confused voice of narcissistic, toxic family systems. I then shuffled the Brauteleige Oracle again and wanted just a single word this time about the journey. And out of a 150 card deck, look how big this deck is, don't you know, I pulled the same card. I pulled the Being Ready card. You are now ready to listen clearly, with no confusion, to your own voice. No longer the Queen of Swords voice going around your head. You can make your own decisions now for your own good. This is a restart out of confusion. The moon also for me means self-grounding. Again, there's the duality of choice there. On a journey towards the High Priestess. This getting ready card coming out again, I think, shows you just how amazing these magic books can be. So I now know in which direction to take this page. So you can see that combining of elements of my tarot practice here. So combine your elements. It's really very magical. As you're working in your enchanted book, to look for those synchronicities, like that same oracle card coming out, or the synchronicities of the visual imagery in the High Priestess card and the Queen of Swords card. Look for synchronicities like that. That's often a pointer to the magic. So what this page became then in the end, it became like almost like a goodbye to the village page. It became an acknowledgement of the poison that had been poured down the hillside after me, long after I'd left. Like the ill intent had continued and will forever continue. I made sure that the page that I was walking to felt a lot more serene and calm. And my 9th point is to use text. You can see I journaled then on top of the page some of these feelings, and I picked out key words as well from the text that showed some of these feelings as well. So throw journaling into it as well. So don't be worried about journaling and writing your thoughts and your feelings directly onto the art pages. After all, this is an enchanted book. It's not just for art. You don't need a separate journal. It can all be layered in. It's a layering of techniques that help the story and the magic show itself. So guys, from gesso, where we started, and subtraction magic, to the magic of listening to whispers, to not worrying about what these books are called, and to calling on the spirit of place out of a book, to combining our magical tools and to spot synchronicities, and to allow our elements like shape and colour and direction and texture to take on a symbolic language of their own, and from finding the story and the message inside the pages of our book. I think those are some of the key points that I wanted to share. I think my final point for this video is to really enjoy the process. I think anything to do with art, it's very easy to not enjoy it because of outcome, of having a set idea about what you want the outcome to be. That can steal joy in art, and it can stop the magic flowing. It's not about what the page looks like at the end, it's about the process and the journey. So enjoy the journey, guys, not the final destination or the outcome. This is about finding magic, not about making pretty pages. So don't get hung up on that. And if you are hung up on that, go and look at some of the work of, say, Picasso, and look at how naive and free he was, and he's one of our most famous artists of all time. So it's never about outcome, it's about the realness and the magic within the journey. So guys, I'm looking forward to this next page. The people in this photo took my breath away, but that will be a story for another day. So thanks guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.